welcome to another episode of Processing with Sam and Malik, a weekly take on life through the lens of fathers, husbands, and most importantly, Philly sports fans. And as always, this episode is brought to you by Sam's Community TV, creating content to establish a community through genuine relationship building. My friend, how are we doing tonight, Malik?
I mean, I'm good. I'm actually not too far from you. I'm gonna catch up with you later on this week and back in Philly, which is nice. I'm really blessed to be in my sister. My sister bought a new place, so she's up there in Stanton Avenue. So I'm hanging out over there. So the background's a little bit different. And then other than that, it's a little bit chilly, but I can't complain. How about yourself?
A little bit chilly. So how was the trek cross country?
It's always good coming home. I mean, this is home. And so, flight was fine. The seats get smaller or I get bigger. I'm not really sure which one it is. But either way, it's always good to be back. So
have you seen anything that jumps out to you that seemed just different from last time you were
home? Yeah. So we are building, or Philadelphia is building everywhere. I mean, it's like every time you go down the street, someone's putting a multi-unit complex or brand new homes in places that I didn't even know you could fit homes. I'm not even sure they're safe, right? Like there are people's yards that are on a downslope, and you go down there and there's a home on that slope. So I see a lot of that now. It's kind of caught me off guard. And then just turnover. So businesses and restaurants that I thought would be there forever or have been there for a long time have now kind of moved on and are being replaced by things that don't seem to be as familiar. I don't seem to be as familiar with.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the biggest thing, where you drive around and you see just different homes and different businesses and new stuff popping up left and right. So it's kind of catching me off guard, but I recognize change is inevitable. So here we are.
I agree, man. I live here and I have the same sort of assessment. It's just amazing how quickly things can change.
Yeah.
And I think it seems like the city is sort of on one heartbeat in terms of exploring it now, because it's all over the city, so it doesn't matter what neighborhood you're in, you're going to see something different, and you're going to see something in the process of being converted into something different.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, welcome
except for
home,
76. Man. 76 is exactly the same. Yeah. Still traffic. There's still two lanes. There's still the one spot the police can hide at right every single time you kind of merge onto the highway. That's not changed. Everything else is pretty much different. 76 will be the same. So, I don't know. Even though it's I might talk about it, but it's my city. I still miss it. So you can't talk bad about it.
Well, speaking of being the same, it kind of segues us into tonight's topic, because what we've experienced as Sixers fans is a tremendous setback. Last week we went out and offered our flowers to one Joel Embiid for his 70-point performance and, his efficiency doing it in 36 minutes and inside, outside, only taking 1 3-pointer. A guy who is just mastering the game of basketball right before our eyes. His only comp has been Wilt Chamberlain, and we've been here to witness it in real time. And to see that kind of season come to a halt, due to a freak accident, quite frankly. One that can happen all the time, diving for a loose ball. Unfortunately, the weight falls on the knee, and now the prognosis is a small sort of procedure and out indefinitely. He's hopeful for a return before the end of the season, and it's just all of a sudden no more Joel Embiid. And so the reason I sort of led into it that way is that over his career, we've had these experiences with him before. Granted, it's been some time, but this is not new for Sixers fans and Joel Embiid. But this time, I mean, each time it hurts more. But this time, there was something about what he was doing that was just out of this world. And you were almost in awe that he was doing it night in, night out. And for you to all of a sudden have no opportunity to see it at all, I mean, that is a story by itself, let alone what the team is doing in his absence, right? So it's like two separate um, ideas for me in terms of just his absence in this moment, in this season. It's poetic, but I guess there's a type of poetry that ends that way. You know what I mean? It's on that side of
Well,
poetic.
for if you're a Sixers fan, unfortunately, your poems are mostly Shakespearean in that they end in tragedy. Um, I I'm not even. I think we got to go back. I'm the fall. Was it Kaminga that fell on him
Yeah,
in the Warriors game?
yeah.
Okay, so I think the first question is, should he have even been playing? Because he got a whole lot of heat from missing the Jokic game or the Denver game. And then shortly thereafter, I don't know if it was the next game or shortly or 2 games after, but whenever sooner than he probably was ready, he was on the court. And he looked like me trying to get out of bed. Right. So he's literally hobbling up and down and he's playing in a game in which he's not himself. He's visually limited. He had a couple moments where he was able to get out on the perimeter and defend guards or what have you. But generally speaking, he was not the guy you described. He was not the guy we just talked about last week. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, if if we keep saying these are freak accidents, but freak accidents keep happening, and I draw a comparison to like living in Houston, they keep saying, "Oh, we have these 500-year storms. Oh, we have these 100-year storms. Oh, these storms are an anomaly." But they keep happening almost scheduled every single January, February, March. All of a sudden, it's a week of 20 degrees, or there's flooding, or there's rain and flooding, and there's a hurricane threat. So is it really a 500-year storm when I'm definitely not 500 years old, and it happens consecutive years? So is it really that? Because we keep saying it's freak, but freaks keep showing up and not in a good way. So like, really, what are we talking about? So I think the first question is, if we go back, should he have played? That's the first question. And then why did he play? I'm of the mind that, listen, we know they're going to get through the first round. Their money's made in the second round. So I don't think he should have been out there until they were actually get clarity on his situation. What do you think?
I obviously do not disagree with you. Listen, I saw something on one of those shows that someone has created. But it's like a person who's worked for a network for a long time, but now they sort of have their own, like a Rich Eisen type of program. I can't think if
Yeah.
it was Rich Eisen, but that type of program. And essentially, they were saying like the bylaws of the NBA. It's essentially WWE. It's entertainment.
Mm.
It is structured as an entertainment league first. So as basketball purists, there are things that we lament about the NBA game and we scratch our heads. And it's fascinating because NBA players have to adjust when they actually go to play internationally, right? Like there's an adjustment that NBA players have to go through in order to understand the rules of international play, because the
Sure.
rules of international play are closer to the more sound basketball rules. The NBA has a whole bunch of just nonsense, like the gather step, like all types of uh, amendments to the game that
Hmm.
only exist in the NBA, right?
Hmm.
So thinking of that component when we see a Joel Embiid, and the irony, of him being injured in that game, Malik.
What's that?
He We were being actively investigated by the NBA
Whether he was hurt and then
while
if he was
he
hurt.
got
Yep.
hurt. It was an open case that had not yet concluded, an open investigation into the 76ers because of his late scratch against Denver. And we're watching the game in real time where this dude is just hobbling up and back. Now, let
Yeah.
me say this, because I'm a person who understands rules. Shame on the Sixers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just say it up front. Look, I already get it. I know the PR is going to be ridiculous, but he can't go for this Denver game. So start the investigation now. Like, the guy can't go, instead of doing what you did, because you didn't do anyone a service. You
No.
put Joel in risk, first of all, because the idea of him playing was already a bad one. So just putting him out there, obviously you're doing that knowing he shouldn't be playing.
And
But
listen, watching that game. I generally have been positive in terms of my view of Nick Nurse. Embiid has been so dominant that he's actually not played most of the fourth quarters in the games in which he started and finished. I'm not talking about like injuries and all that other stuff. And so he's not been too taxed on the minute side. And Nick Nurse is traditionally known for having that. So that being said, I was a little bit more comfortable with him playing because I thought Nick Nurse did a good job. I was disappointed, however, that even seeing him is when all of a sudden he started to actually decide to play him well into the second half.
agreed.
He should, like, Nick Nurse has been very diligent and very careful about giving him a break and letting him off the fourth quarter and keeping him on the, you're going to come back in with 4 or 7 minutes in the second quarter or whatever the case is. And that game, he let him keep going. And he should have seen it and said, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like, you got to get in the way of that. So it happens, he gets hurt.
You know what's awesome, Malik? You identifying that while you were watching that in Texas. The reason I think that's so cool is because I had the same exact thought. And I know, and I've talked to other Philly fans and they said the same thing. It's so crazy that we watch the same thing. It's like, man, I hope you're not the same old coach.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I thought you were different, man.
Yo, speaking
I
of
thought
same
you
old
were
coach,
different. I thought you were the one. I
Wait,
thought you were the one.
Wait, I'll tell you who's not been the one, and I'm not down any shade, but we talked about Doc Rivers. And I think they might be I think he might be the 1-4 right now. I'm just saying. Saying.
I just saw that they lost to Utah, gave up outscored 30 to 40, 13 to 40 in the fourth. Outscored 13 to 40 in the fourth.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you, everybody was talking about defense.
And that deal, let me find out they're about to be paying 4 coaches over there.
There's no question about it. There's no question. There's no more confidence in them because we know how that out. At least with Adrian Griffin, I know we're off topic, but at least with Adrian Griffin, you thought there might be a different end to this story. We know Doc's story. We know as Philadelphians, we know that Doc is going to get you through the regular season. You're going to have a good record. You're going to finish high in the playoffs. You're going to run into some adversity, and I'm not sure that he's got answers. That's what's going to be the MO there. I'm sorry, I'm up here shaking. I'm so mad about this whole situation with Embiid and Doc. I'm shaking the screen.
Listen, I cannot wait to start watching the Bucks play because I'm hearing about their games, but I haven't actually watched them play. I think I'm just going to look at the league pass and watch their next game, especially if the Sixers aren't playing, and just watch them. If this team implodes, what do you even do? Who's to blame, first of all? Because that's a real question. Who is to blame? It's easy to look at Doc. But who would be to blame if the team implodes?
It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's amazing that how much pressure and money and respect is accorded to guys who are in these envious positions, general managers, that they end up in spots where they completely have impulsive actions. It wasn't the coach, it was probably the personnel. And I think the personnel is ultimately what we're going to see here too. The personnel with the Sixers is going to really actually be called into question because we're going to be looking at them and wondering, do they make any kind of adjustments based on their situation? Milwaukee is gone. Milwaukee, I don't think they can win it. I don't think they can win it with Doc. They need personnel changes. They could have done that with Adrian Griffin. Embiid is different, or the Sixers are different because I think they actually have personnel. I think they have the right coach. And so with health, if they change anything, I think they'll be right back. So the question is now, what do you do?
Let me ask you something. If there was an opportunity to get Caruso and it included Toby, was that how that would work? Is the option for Caruso, is that a Toby sort of scenario because
I,
Caruso paid at this point?
I think you can do it. I'd have to get on the trade machine and start playing with it.
Got it.
We should do that while we're on here. Funny.
Got it. Yeah, I'm
But
curious about that
I
because
don't know that it's required. I think it's a matter of preference. So would Chicago take him back, or would they be more
okay,
more
okay,
interested in going
here's
back?
something to consider. Here's something to consider. Right now, the Sixers are 4-11 without Embiid, right?
Yep,
That's a
lost
winning
tonight.
percentage. Right. So now it's 11. They were 4-10, now they're 4-11. So it's a winning percentage of 36%. At that winning percentage, I think that puts us, I took a look at this, that puts us above Toronto in the standings because I think they're winning at about 34% rate, right? Above Toronto. So we would be in 12th place. No, I guess 11th place, right? Because we would just move
Okay,
down.
but definitely out of the playoffs, out of the play-in.
Out of the playoffs, we would be a lottery team.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just asking the question. If we continue to win at a 36% rate, is it worth even making a move to bring in someone? I mean, the deadline is close enough, so it's like you really don't even have much of a choice. It's on the
Is it?
15th.
It's next Thursday, correct? Deadline
Yeah,
is
it's the
next Thursday.
15th, so it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, in light of the fact that the team has demonstrated 4-11 without Embiid, you would have to figure out a way to ingratiate him back into the mix with this newer player to make a run. Now you're almost prolonging the determining whether or not it will work or not because Embiid won't be on the court.
But we
Maybe
were
this player
never.
does stabilize things a little bit, but maybe
Sam, this
because
was
of
always
the
found.
mad dash
This
that
was found money though. This season was found money, right? Like you didn't expect this season
that's my
to
point.
be.
That's what I'm saying. So because it's
But
found money, it's like, do you then slide into that lottery spot?
I think they are probably too far gone to really benefit from a lottery pick, right?
To
So by the
benefit.
time he gets back, by the time, let's say it's a 2-month injury and then he has to get acclimated back, right? So now we're talking about end of April, maybe. So we're looking at a period of games in which he can maybe get his wind. So a shade under 500 for that period of time. If they go under 500, they're not going to be so far removed where being in the lottery is going to really put you in a space to have an advantageous pick. And ultimately, that's not what we should be concerned with. What we really should be concerned with is Embiid is going to come back. Hopefully, he will be healthy, not for the season. And we need to be able to make a run for next season. And a lottery pick does not help us with that. Unless you're going to tell me I'm going to trade this year's pick for a veteran who's under contract, who could then come back into next season with Maxey, with Embiid, plus this new free agent player or this new player. That's the only way this makes sense. Because you don't have time for 2 or 3 more years of development with a guy who we're going to pick up in the draft and he's going to be successful. You got to get ready-made parts now. That's it.
Right.
So
and all I'm saying is if you have to get ready-made parts now, the ready-made parts it has an incentive as well. Like the way NBA trades work, generally both sides agree, right?
mhm.
And the way it works today, a lot of times players are part of the agreement in terms of at least the agency, right? So all I'm saying is that if I were a player that was interested in joining the Sixers this year, like an Anunoby, right? Like, would an Anunoby want to still be traded to the Sixers if Embiid was on the shelf for 2 months?
If it's just a 2-month injury, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at Embiid, now you can make the argument this is going to be the first time that he's actually going to go into the playoffs healthy, because ironically his injury happened in February instead of like May, and
Right,
he will hopefully be back on his feet and will have the reduced risk of some freak orbital injury the last week of the season. So theoretically, when he comes back, he'll get reintroduced, he'll get his wind, and he'll be healthy going in. He'll won't have a rhythm, but
right.
he'll be healthy going in. So like in that sense, he'll be healthy if it's a 2-month injury, which is the ideal hope. Alternatively, I don't think the Sixers can really play for this season. I think they make a move for a guy like Murray, who's under contract, I think you have to make a real decision about Tobias Harris if he's part of your future. I think that's a conversation that has to happen like yesterday. And then you say, I'm going to go into 24-25 season ready to roll with another guy, and this is the team that we're going to compete with. Because if it's a freak injury, which is where we started, is it a freak injury that's going to continue to happen where Embiid is slowly going to degrade over time? Or do you actually say, you know what, listen, I got to go ahead and try to optimize his prime right now and just roll the dice with the best team we can finally put around him? That's it. That's it.
I just don't know why that can't include hitting in the draft. I just think that if Embiid, we know what the real issue is. There's only like one free agent that really kind of like moves me at all, and or it's like so it's like any other name. It's like, oh, let's just wait. It's like I'm not, because I don't disagree that we need to be all in, but I also don't think that we should be desperate that we over swing for something that has a marginal impact based off of what we're going to have to spend to get them. It's like I want us to learn our lessons from recent sort of trade signing scenarios, So the DeJounte Murray, I know he's a player. My brain just, I don't know. I just see him a certain kind of way as a player. I know he is capable. I know he has skill sets. I maybe because he just hasn't been on winning teams yet, I have a hard time seeing him as a winning player. And maybe that's not his fault. He played on the Spurs when they weren't good.
Sure.
And I thought he was supposed to help Atlanta. They're struggling. They're I think out of it as well. So yeah, they're in 10th. Well, so they're in the play-in. So it's like I thought Atlanta was better than this.
I mean, ideally, I mean the world would be such a better place for us if, I don't know, somehow we acquire Paul George. That's not likely to happen. They're going to a brand new place. They're definitely going to want to go in with all their marquee guys, and that's not going to happen. He would be ideal. You're not getting LeBron James, right? You have to make a decision about Tobias Harris. James Harden is coincidentally available. So where are you looking for next season? Because I don't think you can roll the dice another year and say, we're going to try to get somebody and hope that a disgruntled star becomes available and then try and introduce him to the team sometime next year. I think you have to go. You have to go get somebody. And you go get them with an eye for hopefully Embiid comes back, but this is the team we are locked in for next year.
Okay.
I'm going to pull up the list. I'm going to give you some names. Let me give you some names.
Okay.
Let me give you some names. Some free agent names. All right. Look, I just pulled up the list for next year. LeBron James is not coming here. Paul George, not likely. Klay Thompson, doesn't do it for me. Tobias Harris.
At a manageable number?
James Harden. Siakam's
unlikely. He's more likely going to sign. It's just not official yet. But that trade happened, so he's not. So Anunoby's name will probably come up there as well, right?
I would assume he's on this list at some point. But this is a sad-looking list, man.
It is a sad list.
This is sad.
What's crazy? The crazy thing is this season that James Harden is having, because I think Milwaukee's going to have some issues right now with Doc Rivers. We talked about him. We touched on him. But I think first of all, can we talk about the ridiculousness of him being named the All-Star coach for the East?
Hey, listen, man.
What in the entire WWE? I'm telling you, it's either the bylaws or however this league has been formed and created under law. It is similar to however they filed for the WWE. Doc Rivers coaching the All-Star game? How, Sway?
Yeah, why not? Why not, man? Why not? We know we know his defense right now is not going to stop anybody. So We definitely know it's going to be a good scoring game. We know that. We definitely know that. So I'm not mad about it. I think it's ridiculous, but I'm not mad about it. He's earned. Listen,
You know
Doc
what?
Rivers is who he has earned
He's
every
earned it.
single. He's earned it though.
Would you
No,
ask
no, 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 no,
Pop
no,
if
no.
he remember that
Listen, I'm
interview?
just
He's like,
saying
would you ask Pop that question? I've earned it.
he's earned it. He's earned. Listen, he's wins total. He's well respected. He's a champion. He's probably going to be a Hall of Famer, whether we like it or not. He's earned it. Now, the rules are what the rules are, and it just points out to the fact that these rules are poorly written. Because there's no way he should be managing. He shouldn't be managing the game. He shouldn't be coaching the game.
What do you mean the rules are what the rules are? The second place coach coaches the All-Star game? They're not in first place.
What was it? The second place, or was it based on? Oh, it's into this season. Yeah, I believe so. Isn't that the case?
Boston has had the best record in the league since the beginning.
Let's see. Wait, hold on. Let's see. What are the requirements? Because if that's the case, Silver needs to throw his whole body in front of this to make this change. You got me looking this up on the fly. Now I'm curious.
It's like I can see if a coach got named the head coach while his team was in first place, and by the time that game actually occurred, their team's no longer in first. Then Milwaukee was never in first.
There are requirements about it. So there's something. Hold on. Let's see.
They don't want to give a nod to
the event
dude
last season. That's what it is. That's what it is.
He coached.
So Doc Rivers. All right. So to Doc Rivers' credit, that's it. Doc Rivers is on record saying that he actually should not be coaching it. He said it's ridiculous. Now, I'm sure he's not going to send any money back, but he definitely said he's not going to.
He says he's going to send it to Adrian Griffin. He says he's going to send the
money.
Oh, did
he really?
Yeah, he says he's going to send the money and something else to Adrian Griffin.
Do you think he's sending that money because he feels bad that he stabbed my man square in the back? Do you think he feels bad? I'm not saying it.
Send the money because the world knows he didn't earn that. The rest of the money that Adrian didn't get in his contract, Doc's getting every cent. I heard Doc's deal is silly.
I don't. Why can't you coach back-to-back years?
I guess
if your team is good enough, why does that matter?
Who wants to see?
Why does it matter?
I don't disagree.
I mean, if you're the coach in an All-Star game, your job is pretty much to do just substitutions and make the last 5 minutes of the game competitive. That's it.
Here's the one thing I'll say. It's an honor, right, to coach the All-Star game. So, well, I guess you're right. I mean, the players earned it. Why can't the coaches earn it?
Why can't the coach? Right. Why can't he done it? Mazzulla was under a ton of criticism last year. He's come back this season. He's got a more talented team that is performing at that level. Why couldn't he have done it?
Listen,
is it more ridiculous? So is it more ridiculous? So the real question is, Sam, is it more ridiculous that Rivers actually is coaching it, or more ridiculous that Mazzulla can't coach it? I mean, he's earned it consecutive seasons.
Rivers, because at least we know with Mazzulla that's happened before. Right, the rule's been in place. There has to have been a coach that won the conference twice, or was leading twice. Doc Rivers literally walking off the street into that is just laughable. So to me, and granted, we all understand why, and to his credit, he's like, look, I think it's just as ridiculous. But the point he is saying it's ridiculous is because it's ridiculous. I don't think Mazzulla is on the record saying it's ridiculous that I'm not coaching in the All-Star game this weekend.
I think he should. He should.
Well, at least Rivers is on the record saying this is ridiculous.
Well, Mazzulla should go to HR. So I don't know who is the HR department in the NBA, but he needs to go there and say it because he's earned that now for consecutive seasons. That's what it is. And the idea that we are even talking about this because this inane rule where you've earned it, but sorry, you've already done it, then be better than me. Be better than me.
That's what I thought sports was all about.
Mm.
But again,
I guess
welcome
our
to the
coach,
WWE.
I love WWE though. I'm not gonna lie. I love WWE. Big fan. Watched the
Listen,
Royal Rumble like
it
2 weeks ago.
has real value. You know, they're like, look, we could play it one way, nah, or add some pizzazz here and there, some spice, some flair, some conflict, some special situations that just create talking points, and
Wow.
fodder for, the next whatever, and it's just like, here we go again. It's so fascinating how sports creates its own stories and its own headlines. Like that's what I'm saying. It really is the WWE. It creates its own things for people to follow while they're eating popcorn. You
Well,
know,
last week,
it's fascinating.
last week I told you that I was scouting 7 and 8 year olds because we were getting ready for preparing for the little league season, and I was out there getting ready to draft, and so we had a 3 to 4 hour, 3.5 hour draft this past Friday night, in which I consolidated 3 different sheets from coaches on my team, including myself. And we tried to aggregate scores on fielding, throwing, hitting, running, pop ups, and looking at their kind of metrics. So, right handed thrower, left handed thrower, right handed batter, left handed batter to balance the lineup. Um, Talking about fascinating, you would have thought that this was actually going to be a real draft where players were going to go right from second grade to the actual professional leagues. Like it was that serious. I have been sending emails. I have been making phone calls. I have been doing background checks. I have reached out to dads who want to assist and find out what the role is in terms of developing their player as we go into the spring season
Are
of
you
8U
interested?
Little League
Are you
Baseball.
interested in player development?
Yeah, that's a real conversation. I had a real conversation, Sam. I'm not even joking, where it's like, hey, listen, my son should play this position. And not that I was some all star, but I actually know now a lot more than I did because I didn't come into the game until much later. But seeing these kids and the parents' ideas about what their son can do, it's like you're a little disillusioned, right?
Mm.
Because your son is used to fielding and moving a particular way. He's not used to doing it from different angles and resetting his feet. We can do things to work on his progress. And I'm sorry that you experienced certain things with your past team, but they weren't being honest with you. Because right now, I just want to develop your player. I don't care about winning, I don't know, the World Series. So talk about fascinating. This is the world that I'm currently in right now. And I actually have my first practice on Sunday, and I'm relatively excited about our squad, the Cannonballers out of Katy, Texas.
That's dope, man. And you said this Sunday's your first?
Sunday's our first practice. Yeah, so I'll be heading back, leaving Philly Saturday, and then right to the practice field on Sunday and
You
meet
think
my.
you're going to get any sleep Saturday night?
Well, I got to stay up and make a lot of practice plans.
Oh,
I want my
so,
kids. We're going to be able to come out.
you'll be busy on purpose because you knew you probably wouldn't be able to sleep anyway. So you're like, oh,
Well,
I'll just plan to do
listen,
that.
I got to tell you, there is a level of excitement. Our Vegas win total is 8.5 games. It's a 12-game season. So, I'm gonna take the over. I feel good about our team. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Have you won at that percentage?
So last season we won. I believe we were 10-3 or 10-2,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah, and we had a couple lapses. We had some kids get sick, some kids. Man, like my kids, I was listen. I'm not necessarily making a political position on vaccines and flu shots, but for the good of the team, take the flu shot, bro. Come on, man, we need you, right? If you're playing in the infield, I can't have kids getting sick.
That's funny.
So
I was
I'm not,
watching this thing called Choir today on Netflix, and it has to do with, I want to say, like it's a Detroit choir, inner city choir, teenagers, and they performed on, was it America's Got Talent, one of those shows, and they were runners up. But it was sort of like a documentary that it was just showing them performing at different venues and then sort of following the lives of some of the students. And what was interesting was the one, it was like the commitment to it, but like the choir director would not allow, like, nothing could pri- that choir had to be the priority
Yeah.
amongst all things. And it was interesting following the students because one of the girls played on the basketball team and she was good.
Hmm.
And she was just like, I like to do, she was like, there's a lot of things I like to do. And she was like, I don't understand a world where if I had a dream to pursue something, I just wouldn't do it. She was like,
Hmm.
I don't know what that looks like, and I, like, when I heard that, that hit me because there's a lot of dreams deferred in me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like the idea of a young person being confused about the idea of like, but if I wanted to pursue that, like, why wouldn't I? Like, just confused. Um, but still understanding that there's a conflict at times, and just saying I just have to manage the conflict. Meanwhile, the choir director is just like, there's only one decision to make. And so I say I would say, like, just thinking about what you were talking about in terms of um having, the commitment of the players and the you as coaches, like seeing a choir director and understanding like what went in it for him and to prepare the children. You know what I'm saying? And you realize like why there's sort of like a demand, but at the same time, kids are kids. Like, things happen in their lives, things come up, and you have to manage around it. Even though as an adult, like, there's a lot that is riding on it for you in for different reasons that you've created for yourself. And the fact that you're relying on a young person who may or may not be reliable for things that they can or can't control.
Yeah.
And it's just like, just watching, so hearing you talk about that and then watching that today, it was just like, wow, that is interesting when you're like relying, when you're doing a service and you're giving it your all, and it's for children.
So I think that gets to or touches on a larger point where I actually really struggle with as a parent.
Mhm.
Um, if you have a child who is deeply interested in something and has a real passion, whether it be a sport, art, culture, whatever it is. I'm gonna call it a non-conventional career, right? Everyone's not gonna make the NBA, everyone's not gonna make the NFL, everyone's not gonna be the greatest painter or sculptor or musician and so on. So something in that world, right? A non-conventional, maybe like a conventional is more like teaching, accounting, a doctor, something of that sort. But that is their passion. That is what they want to pursue. And growing up, you were told you can be anything you want to be. Sam, you want to be president, you can go be president. Sam, you want to go be an astronaut, you can go be an astronaut. And then they actually decide they want to be an astronaut. They actually decide they want to play the drums or that they want to forego college and actively pursue a career in sports. Brandon Jennings decided that he was going to be the first kid, if you remember him a couple of years ago, decided to leave high school instead of going to the pros because they didn't
Mhm.
allow that rule yet. He wouldn't play abroad, right? Or a guy like Bryce Harper, who was just phenomenally gifted. There probably wasn't much of a question, but he went from high school to the pros and was in the majors within his first year. But if your son or daughter is incredibly gifted and deeply passionate about something, what is the obligation about commitment that we have? Because we
You
can
said, what
say
is the
commit, commit,
obligation of
commit,
what?
commit. And then when they want to, in terms of commitment, because we may teach commitment right now. And then your son or daughter who is deeply passionate, my son loves baseball. My oldest is really good at baseball. And he wants to be a professional baseball player. And I think maybe he can be a professional baseball player. I don't know. I know it's incredibly hard. There's a lot of things that have to happen. At what point in time do I say, hey, listen, we might need a plan B, right? I know this is your all in A, and I'm with all in A as a 10-year-old, as an 11-year-old, probably as a 12-year-old. 13, I'm like, let's maybe have a little bit more pragmatism. When you're in high school and college, do you all of a sudden say, stop investing in the commitment the way that you pursued it or were told to as a child? At what point does that shift? At what point does that change? And you say, maybe you shouldn't commit as hard as you wanted to because now the real world interjects and shows up. These bills aren't going to pay themselves. At what point does that happen? Because choir is super important, baseball is super important, while right now the real world doesn't show up. But what if you encourage them to go further into that? Are you risking failure? Are you risking them being on the street homeless? Like, what's the fear? And as a parent, is it fair to say, have a dream, but only for a limited time, only at certain expense, only with certain risk? Because we're qualifying it. And that's a struggle that I have.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll say this. My parents really encouraged us, but I will also say we needed to convince them, right? They just needed to be convinced. Like it didn't matter what they knew, it was do you believe what you're saying? And that's all they needed to know. So I even think back in terms of my path with basketball and how for many years it was never encouraged in the home. And at one point it became not really contentious, but piano was what was supposed to be prioritized. And I was playing ball instead. And I wasn't practicing. And they're paying for me to have lessons. And it was just like, what's going on here? We're wasting money. All right, rubber meets the road. What are we doing? And my mom was like, I'm telling you, you'll regret it. And I'm like, hoops. Finally, I can make a decision. Hoops. But it was based off the fact that I was wasting their money. But their desire was an instrument, you know? And so with that as a backdrop, when I really started laying in on hoops and like other people were showing up at the house because of my talent, it was just like, what's going on here? And that's when I kind of just laid out like, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. These are the opportunities that are actually in front of me. And it was them looking at me in the eyes and saying, okay, we have no idea what you're talking about, but we believe you, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And that that's the type of scenario for my kids that I want to be able to offer them, even if I got to work some things in the background, to make sure that there there's some other due diligence done just in case they're not doing it, you know, where maybe I'll do some additional research in whatever sector that they are,
Right.
they feel like this is it. I'm gonna hit in NFTs. It's like, okay, what the hell's NFT?
Right. Right.
So it's like I want to be that person because I do believe that what a person I it's like I understand that there are probabilities, but I think knowing how wonderfully made we are and also feeling that there are small things in life that kind of derail us from really maximizing, you know, the full opportunity that life presents, um, suggests to me that with maybe a little bit more guidance and understanding for them of the world around them, you know what I mean? Where it's like I'm truly not looking at it through my eyes, but doing my darndest to look at it through theirs to help them
Mm-hmm.
see their foot, you know, uh, the issues not from this older, almost 40-year older
From the
person.
worldview, from a worldview. Right.
Yeah, because I think that I you know, I did a show. My wife and I did a show with another couple, and the topic was dad guilt, and
Topic
maybe
was
I'll just
what?
even dad guilt. Like my wife
Dad guilt.
started off with mom guilt as a
Oh,
topic,
dad
right? And
guilt.
she
Yeah.
gave it definition and sort of, at one point the two wives were talking for some time, their mothers as well, about mom guilt. And for me, part of the reason we invited them on the show is because when my wife presented the topic to me to talk about, I just said, I don't think I'm going to have a lot to say
Mm-hmm.
about mom guilt. You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure dad guilt is a
Mm-hmm.
thing, but I don't think about what that is per se. I'm not, I don't feel like I'm just carrying dad guilt daily. But when we started breaking it down, I did realize that there's there are certain things that I'm conscious of. And where the guilt lies is that I want my children to always feel that they can explore life around me, right? Like they don't have to hide that part because they get in trouble when they try to understand certain things about life and I observe it and then I get upset. Like I want them to feel like it's like that I can be measured enough in my responses to still shield them away from harmful activity and not reinforce anything that is negative behavior, but at the same time identify the teachable moment before my emotions want to offer an immediate penalty.
But I think part of my guilt wouldn't come in the response. It's the processing of it. It's not in the outcome. It's not in the reply. It's in the support or the guidance that I offer as they kind of undergo the
There it
experience.
is.
So as you were talking about the course that you were on with piano versus basketball, you know, I don't know, maybe you would have been a great pianist. I have no idea. And I'm sure you are settled, or maybe you have some regrets, or maybe further aspirations with basketball, or maybe it's fulfilled. I don't know that, but I do wonder as it relates to some of the things that my children say, or that I hear a person who may ask me for guidance or advice, or a young cousin or friend, son, or whomever, based on my experiences, that if I have an obligation to provide hope or pragmatism. And in pragmatism, is
Mhm.
that really a deterrent to things that may seem impossible to me and for the vast majority of the world, and not necessarily the case for that individual who commits
Agreed.
to going further.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think you taking that posture is important because at some point it's like if you really want the person to succeed, everyone can't be a cheerleader. Someone has to be the person that does like the um it's like they test your system. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
their sole job is to see if they can break this thing. You know what I mean? Like to see if you have a sound plan. And so it is the pragmatist. And I think a person who is confident, so fascinating. I had a conversation this Sunday with my family about something that I presented them. And I had both responses, right? Where it's like encouragement and then some questions. And the questions to me, I thought were great questions. And it only reinforced that, like, we will have answers for those. Like it didn't throw me off. I wasn't like, oh, because I can't answer that, then maybe I need to pivot this whole idea altogether. So
Mhm.
to your point, it it's funny we're talking about this when I have like sort of an anecdotal experience from 2 days. It was today Monday, so
Today's
Sunday was
Monday, so
yesterday.
yesterday.
This is yesterday. This
Yeah.
is yesterday, hours ago, of
Yeah.
experiencing this exact same situation
I,
where I received praise and then I also received, all right, so this means that you have to do blah 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 blah. So there's homework, and that's okay, and I welcome because that's why I'm communicating.
I,
So
I think the other part of it too, and I know this is way far from, maybe we can pray for Embiid and all this, but like there's a faith perspective in this. And there's a song that my man's church played the other day, and I had heard it before, but it hit me in a different way. It's a Maverick City song. I don't know if you know Maverick City, whatever it is. But More Than Able.
mm,
And literally, I don't know if it's the first verse or it's early, but it was talking about, when did you throw away faith about doing the impossible? I'm paraphrasing the language, about praying for something or believing in something, and then all of a sudden you just stop believing that impossible things are really true. And so I think about that in the context of all that we're talking about right now, in terms of dreams, in terms of belief.
yeah,
And so if my 8-year-olds believe like they can be, the next World Series MVP, whatever year they turn 20 years old or 22 years old, why would I not believe, if they're doing the work, if they are seemingly committed and they understand the challenges, why would I not believe for impossible? Part of what grounds me in terms of my convictions and who I am has got to be some element of faith. And in that faith is the actual, at some point in time, manifestation and realization that those things that I don't believe are possible can actually happen. And so why would I throw like water on a dream? Why would I tamp down your enthusiasm when that's actually out there? Why can't I believe that Embiid can get through a postseason healthy? Why can't I believe that? Right? And it's not happened. It's not happened, but it's something that I actually have to check myself because I do feel guilty that I actually hold on to some of those feelings of regret, some of those feelings of doubt, that I project pessimism when I know that my circumstances aren't your circumstances.
Right.
And what might be my possible or it might be your impossible that you can actually do.
Right.
I don't know.
Impossible is possible for you. You know.
So I have a hard time with that. That's something that this draft, I know this was all about 8U and 40 times, but like hearing them talk about it and then getting started with the sports season and my older son gets started in a week or so, I start to see it and I start to think like, what should I be telling them? What should I be teaching them? Am I teaching them the right things? Am I diminishing their star? And that shouldn't be my goal.
Here's how I think our approach should be as fathers. And it's funny you talked about being a person of faith because I think we need to include in our intro that we're believers, like we're husbands, believers, and fathers, you know, and we're Philly sports fans. So update to come. But you know, you talked about being pragmatic, right? And how a person, if they're really on their square, how they'll respond to that kind of information. Because if they know, if it's like, I don't know if you've seen the Kanye West documentary on Netflix.
Parts of it,
yeah.
But
And so it's like Kanye has always been Kanye, right? Like that's the gist. It's like from the very beginning, the kid has always been like focused on this idea of being an artist, a rapper included, not just the music.
At some point, I don't know if I can tell you on camera or afterwards. I have to tell you a Kanye West story about him coming to Penn State when I was in college or I graduated, and what he did. Talking about Kanye being Kanye. It was outrageous, but that's a whole other conversation.
I think we might have to do it off camera to begin, and then we'll
probably safer that way.
You know, yeah. But the point is that it didn't matter what people were saying to him. Like he was going to figure out a way to keep moving forward, right? And so when I think about that kind of person and like knowing that we're talking about things that seem very improbable, like it requires that type of level or degree of just focus. So for me, what I plan to do with my children is just help build them to be the best versions of themselves, right? That way, whatever it is that they choose to focus on, you know, like they'll have the intangibles to apply it to whatever that thing is. You know, like, so my encouragement is more in terms of raising them to be the best versions of themselves with the hope that whatever they do they stick to and give it their all, that they don't half step. Like that's my thing. I want my children, whatever they go after, go for it. Go for it. Just go for it. Don't, you know what I'm saying? Don't not really go for it and then be upset didn't get it. Go for it.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to teach them to do. So if I can teach them to do that, to me, I'm less concerned at what I don't even call it failures, like what didn't pan out, if you will, the first time around, you know, or didn't yield the immediate sort of like whatever they were looking for, because that's also part of life. But if I know that they're willing to go for it, then I feel like, all right, they'll be okay.
The reason why this comes up is that my wife had sent me a request. I am the designated Hallmark card writer in our family. So if there's ever an occasion that there's a card that I need to send you, or birthday, Christmas occasion, whatever it is, it can say Malik, Theron, Aaron, Thomas, and our dog could all be on there. I wrote it. Like I am the one that writes the words. And so for 5th grade graduation, I don't remember in yearbooks that they actually gave like a special shout out page where you can do a message from your mom and dad or your guardians or whomever and put the picture next to it and send some words of encouragement. And so I had to write something for him. And I tried to get out of it because she was like, I was like, it's not that deep, but she wanted me to make it deep. And it hit me in a way that I was like, I need to still encourage. Like, even though I might be circumspect on certain things, even though I'm like, I don't want you always on my payroll, even though I want you to know that life can hit you and hit you in a way that you did not want nor expect. I want you to go. I want you to go. And so I wrote those words. Dude, I was finding myself emotional sitting in the Starbucks, man. Like, it was real. It was real because I do ultimately want you to pursue all of those things. And if you have to fall, then we're going to get you back up. But you'll fall, and then we're going to brush and go. But I know that even at this age, like the words that I speak are powerful. They can encourage, they can destroy, they can be an incentive, they can be a guide, but I don't want them to be a deterrent. I do not.
Right.
And so I tried to put all of that in like I don't know, a 30-word caption.
I'm at a point though where like my father's words, they were a deterrent. They were a deterrent, but they weren't, because it really, looking back at it, it's like it really was always a test, because I only stood tall when I had conviction, and if I didn't, I would wither. So it's like, is it the right kind of deterrent? Is it the life deterrent that's out there that I'm just getting exposed to in house? The easy version of it. And so
Right.
ultimately, maybe I didn't really have the metal for that anyway, because I wasn't even willing to defend whatever he said to me worked. And now I'm looking back to the drawing board, So um, that's why I thought that it was fascinating when I did sort of make certain decisions. Like I knew it wasn't even, because at the time, a lot of times my focus was always just obeying, right?
Yeah.
And it was in those few instances where I felt like there's a different answer, but I'm also not being disobedient,
Right.
And so it's like, and so I would stand in that kind of a truth around what I was doing. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not disobeying, but this is what it is,
Yeah.
So, um, so it's like, in saying all that, I'm realizing that we're at times trying to figure out who I wanted to be occurred away from them. Because it's like, I know it's not piano,
Mm.
and I don't have the conviction like I do for basketball. So this other thing, I got to figure this out somewhere else. Like they can't see this thing that I'm also spending time doing. I can't. I'm not willing to stand in front of it like basketball.
I think part of that, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think, having parents who were probably of the same generation or the same vein of type of thinking, where they were born out of obligation, born out of duty, born with responsibility, and a certain level of conviction about moving things forward despite previous family conditions or their existing conditions. I think that's kind of where I'm sure your parents come from. I know that's where my parents come from. And so there really wasn't space to be thinking about, well, at least let me rephrase that. There wasn't a lot of the conversation about expressing outside of the norm. It was, you need to realize and
Everything had
create.
to be structured.
You had to be structured, create within the structure.
Right.
And I don't lament any of that at all, because I think it's been, I'm comfortable. My parents are great parents. I feel like I've not messed my kids up too much.
Right. I
But
mean, I think they're real advantages.
But I
It's
do,
like
but I do think about this, and this is the part that I guess I am processing because of my 8U and because of my message to my 5th grader in his yearbook, is that I want to make sure that I give them the space to create outside of that structure and believe that you can exist beyond the strictures of structure.
And that's what goes back to me in terms of helping them just be the best versions of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do that, then they'll be responsible on their own time.
Yeah.
Even when they're creating, it's like at least they're focused on do like the principles that you've instilled will still come to bear as they're working things out in their own mind.
Yeah.
Like they have some guiding lines already, and it's not absent of everything that you've taught them this exploration space, because I know what that looks like too, where it's like you are really going against the grain. That what this part of exploring is not, they ain't got no kind of time for this. And you know what I'm saying? And so it's like I've been there too. So
Yeah.
it's just something I think about, and I think in terms of the guilt, it's just, when I'm realizing, hey, there's a teachable moment, and just like trying to process a little bit more efficiently, because it's about the speed of processing. It's like there is no Monday morning quarterback doesn't work with young kids, like in that moment you responded to them a certain kind of way and they file that back. They file that away, and it's like they're little computers, and so I I don't want them to hide things from me because, of a concern of a reaction. Even if they're doing something that's really dangerous, I still want to be able to respond in a way where I can teach them and explain to them why it's so dangerous, as opposed to, well, last time daddy got really upset when I was playing
And they
with
never do it.
knives, so I'm gonna go in the bathroom and lock the door and play with
Oh,
knives.
so
You know
high.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So it's like that, and that hasn't happened, world, but just as an example of what I'm referring to.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So
It's
yeah,
there's no manual on this.
there isn't, and I mean, we've really kind of already touched on processing, but the one thing that I sort of was going to communicate about processing and even using a manual is that what I'm processing now is the fact that we've changed schools for our son.
Hmm.
So this is something that we didn't do with our daughter, where we made a change in the schooling in mid-year. We did it traditional when in September, like everybody else. Um, an opportunity sort of presented itself. We had talked about it, and I'm proud of us as parents in a sense that once we made a decision, we didn't second guess ourselves. And when things happened, we recognized that this all orchestrating itself is part of what we've been praying for. And so even when it came to like the final decision, it's like, wait a minute, are we sure we want to? It's like, yes, it's like we prayed for this. Like, let's not have any doubts now, because that to me is like the adversary,
Now,
trying to have you doubt something.
what precipitated the change, if I may ask?
Well, we just, I think that ultimately, um, the preschool felt more like a daycare, and we wanted him to be in something that felt more like a school.
Hmm.
So he's 3.5, but we just felt like, again, we talk about structure, right? Like we just felt the more structure in his setting would serve him well, especially with the types of schools that we plan to enroll him in the future. So it's like he needs to be introduced to a certain way of operating, um, in order to be able to at least thrive in that setting in the future. It's fascinating, Malik, because it's night and day, and it's so weird to say night and day, because we didn't really have any issues with the facility. We just felt like it could be accelerated. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like we just
Yeah.
felt like the care. It's almost like he's waiting. And I feel like he needs to be pushed. Like he needs to
Sure.
be like keeping up. Not like waiting for something. And I just like that was always the sense that I got from him. And it's only been 2 weeks. The boy comes home with homework at 3. He's
Drives.
excited. He's excited to do it because he sees his sister do homework all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's like he gets to now do homework with his sister. Um, when I picked him up today, the person who sort of like checks everyone in and out, he like hugged her and stayed, and she was like, "But you don't want to leave?" And he was like, "No." And I was just like, "Wow, bro." I was like, "Son, I'm so proud of you, man. Like before you were running out of that other place, like you couldn't wait. When you saw me, you got happy and ran to the door. And now it's like you're torn because of the time you're having. It's like, oh, Dad, you're here already.
Right.
It's like, and I'm like, yeah, it's time to go. So to see that in his face when it comes to school, it's just like I'm processing that. And it's something that it's a place where his sister didn't go. So for him, it's his school. Um, Malik, the boy's so excited that on his own he chose to wear ties. He wore bow ties his first couple of days, and then wore like a necktie. And all they wear are like white. They just wear white polo shirts, blue sweaters, and dark slacks. Like gray slacks, and he's putting on ties at 3, bow ties at that. And I'm like, you just want to put on a bow tie? He's like, yeah, I want to wear and it's like, sure, son. It's almost like his Will Smith sort of adjustment to the dress code. Like it's a uniform where he's just putting a tie on.
Oh yeah.
So and it's like colorful. So it's not like, but they allow it, and I love it. I love the fact that he has that feeling of presentation around going to his new school, all of that. And so for me to process that in a 3-year-old, and just even realizing like this is part of him coming to his own, like he's not the baby that I still remember, because now he's thinking about school, and so yeah, it's just a few times over the
Here's
past few
you and
weeks,
Sam,
I'm
man.
just kind of like pinching myself, like I feel like I'm dealing with like a kindergartner, and he's still like, he has another year of preschool after this, and so, but to just change the environment, it's like night and day, so
Yeah.
that's why, again, it goes to the whole idea is like exposing them to the right things, giving them what they need early on, so that when they are coming of age and making decisions, there's a foundation, that won't allow them to stray too far in their spirit of exploration. Like they always have a center and know that, yeah, I might be curious, but not that curious.
Well, cheers to you and your wife, man. That is a big decision. I remember I changed schools multiple times, probably for far less purposeful reasons than you guys made. My parents didn't like a lot of that was going on. I remember I went to one school. I'm pretty sure they're closed. Building blocks was an absolute mess. It was down here in Germantown. And I remember my dad. You remember the military guys with the
Hmm.
parachutes and like the little green men?
Yeah,
You know those little toys?
yeah.
I remember being on top of the playground at a place that was way too high for however old I was. And I remember taking that dude and dropping him and then jumping off trying to race him to the ground as my dad was walking up. And I remember him lighting into me, and then every single teacher or daycare instructor who was there. And that was the last time that I was at that school. Again, I don't think your reasons for intellectual growth and stimulation were the same as his reason, but I am sure that he will work out. I am fine, and this
Listen,
will work out just as well.
experience it all, and so
Yeah.
even for my kids, like I'm open to whatever the best school is, and if they gotta adjust, I adjusted
And,
every
and I
time.
think I think in all of this, and maybe the lesson kind of to take from all of this is that they're resilient. And so, the ability to transition and adapt quickly and be successful and thrive in those environments, regardless of the number of changes or the environments that you were dropped into. Your parents trusted you to be resilient and to be able to find your way, to kind of be a map maker and figure out your path. So, cheers to them. And I think maybe that's kind of I've been processing our conversations. We've been going through all of this, and I think that's kind of where I need to land in terms of letting my kids find their own path, to be
Yeah,
cartographers, to go and chart their course.
yeah.
And I think it's evident that you're doing fine. I don't have any warrants, so
Mine are 3 and 6, man. So I mean,
I think we're good. I think we're good. I think we're
but
good.
but I think you're right. It's just giving them the tools, man. Showing them how to use the tools, showing the proper safety, tool etiquette. You know what I mean? Like going over those basics with them, then they realize that, okay, dad knows it's okay for me to explore if I do it properly. Like there's a proper way of going about this, and
Yeah,
it's like he's not unwilling to have these conversations, and in fact, he equips me to do it the best way possible. Hoping that I'll still err on the side of caution every time. It's like, and there's still an expectation, but he trusts me enough. And so that's where I really want to live with my children, because that wasn't part of the relationship I had with my dad. As a kid, it was like I was in my place, he was in his place. What he said goes, and if I was doing something that he didn't say goes, and I was doing it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I'd rather my kids have a more open relationship and not compartmentalize things. But I know that my response to them will force them to do that over time. So
Amen to that.
that's what I'm processing, my brother.
Amen to that. And if we can't process, we can always have a beverage.
Yeah. Good old Adam's ales, my mom would say.
There you go.
Water.
There you go. Well, either way, I would probably be having a beverage after. I know.
Yeah.
I think they should go all in. I think you have to. I think you should go all in, not for this season, but with next season in mind. And you need to have a roster and that to do that. Dream. That's it.
It makes sense, man. I just, as long as it's not an overreach. So again, we don't disagree. I believe that going all in, I think this team needs to make the best decision for the team. And if that best decision does not mean it's a trade for a DeJounte Murray based off of whatever we might have to give up for it, I'm okay with them drawing that conclusion. I would love to get Caruso. To me, he's my guy. I just think that he does the kinds of things and can defend at a high level. You're talking about the elite wings coming out of the East. You got to deal with Jalen Brunson in New York. You got to deal with who Boston has. You have Lillard in Milwaukee. Like, you're going to have to guard guards, and so to not have, with Melton being on the mend, I'd rather upgrade that spot and have your elite wing defender on this team, because without it, we're going to have trouble beating anyone in the 7-game series. As dominant as the Sixers can be offensively, when it comes down to series, they pick the matchup. And if you don't have an answer for it, just keep going to the well. That's just how the game goes.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see.
We will see. So, folks, hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Please make sure you like and subscribe on your way out. And again, also hit the notification button. That way you'll be alerted to all shows when they drop and when they premiere. Again, we are every Monday night, 10 o'clock Eastern time on YouTube, Sam's 2 Community. Malik, anything else you would like to do? Signing us out from Philadelphia, sir?
Hey man, I'm gonna avoid potholes, and I'm gonna avoid cheesesteaks.
Good luck with that. Keep your eyes peeled, man. They come up on you quick.
Yeah, it's real in these streets, and not for the violence reasons, because my car can't handle it.
We're doing better in this short 2024.
I guess.
In fact, actually in 2023, our rate went down significantly. It was the first drop that we've had. It was like we've had a steady thing.
Damn, we can't even say it, because we might have had like the volume, but 95 collapsed. There's no pothole like a bridge actually actually collapsing.
Listen, see, now you're going to start me on a whole nother. You know what? Thank you for that. I'll fill the audience in on my theory relating to the 95 collapse, because the 95 collapse, and right when that happened, there was a contamination in like a water purifying sort of system, and like all these zip codes were impacted. So it felt like a weird Gotham City situation where they blow up the bridges so you can't leave, and then like they put something in the water, and so now all of a sudden everyone's scared of the Batman. It's just like, you've got to
say Governor Shapiro is Bane. Governor Shapiro is Bane, or Batman.
I'm telling you. Then the bridge went again. Like, it was weird. Like, you had that whole situation, Malik, to see that bridge on fire like that, and people driving over it right before it went down, and it was just like you guys are crazy, But welcome to Philadelphia, man.
But you know what? That only counts as one pothole, bro. So that's it. Bridge collapse, one pothole.
I think the part that's really interesting, and some could say even damning, is how quickly they got it fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, where there's a will, there's a way. Because they got that thing on track, lickety split.
Yeah, they weren't playing. And I wouldn't have been the first homie driving over that, but I appreciate the fact that they got it knocked out within 2 weeks.
I mean, they built it like a Lego. Like, it's just, it's not a bridge anymore. It just sits on this block. It's like a block of road. It's like, it runs. It's connected.
I take 76. I don't even mess with 95. No, I'm good. I'll pick it up later on. I'll pick it up off the bike. I'm
You're
good.
not get on the Garden State Expressway. I'll see you on the E-way. Well, my friend, this has always been Rich, man. Look forward to catching up next week to see what the Sixers if they've made a move or if there's more, scuttlebutt about who they're targeting. Obviously, we plan to have more information on the status of one Joel Hans Embiid,
Yep.
and I do think that it's maybe time for us to touch on. We'll have the results of the Super Bowl, but before maybe we dive into that game, the changing of the guards in the NFL. And there's a long time coach who was might not coach anymore, man. And I think we probably both have a perspective on his tenure up there in New England. And so, even from a Philadelphia fan, to offering how we felt about, old Belichick.
Do you think he's drawing unemployment? Do you think he's collecting unemployment? Like, do you think he has? He's like, hey, I can't get a job. Like, do you think he pays into it? I mean, he's entitled to it, right?
You know what? I have to look at his contract. I gotta look at the contract. I gotta see how that's worded specifically for him. Generally speaking, I would say absolutely. But he might have had this like other clause in there where they had a handshake deal, and it's like, hey, as long as you don't collect, then you can use the boat in June.
So you don't think he went to like Massachusetts Career Link and was like, I can't find a job? Like, I don't know how that works. I don't know how that works.
We are in agreement that there's no scenario where he comes back to coach as anything other than the head coach, right?
No, he's not. No, he wouldn't do that. No, I mean, because ultimately, I think he's already. If he left today, he's likely cemented as the greatest coach today. If he comes back as a defensive coordinator or assistant of some sort, then he's not going to be credited with the wins, which I think is his motivating factor.
Right.
So
right. You're right.
No, bro.
He can't. He can't. So, he's married to his success.
Well, he's limited by his past success because I don't think, absent having Tom Brady, he's not going to be attractive. I think that's the question.
Right. And that's our point. He's married to the success that he had. There's no other brides for him.
The further he gets from it, I think it's going to be more difficult to say that he can replicate anything that resembles that without a superstar quarterback. I mean, we're getting off topic, but
defense is always so stout, and that's why it's like, could he be a D coordinator?
Ty Law, Hall of Famer. Richard Seymour, Hall of Famer. Vince Wilfork, I'm not sure if he was in, but he was close. So he had guys. Junior Seau was there for a period of time, Hall of Famer. So Rodney Harrison, Hall of Famer. So we're not talking about guys who he grew. We're talking about guys. Teddy Bruschi. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but he was a very good player for a very long time.
Right.
So he had guys there, well, both that he grew and guys that he acquired later on in his career, in their careers, who contributed to a high level of that success, a high percentage of that success. So, but we'll see. We'll see. Listen, I'm gonna put a few dollars away from him, see if he needs anything from me. So,
all right, my brother. Well, until next time, my friend.
Be well, man. Take care of yourself.
Sir.